orientation to what you'll hear. I'm a poet, and today I'll be sharing notes, sketches, associations, a few pictures, a sort of performance poem. And since poets choose their words carefully, I'll be reading what I wrote. I am also a scholar of visual and verbal self-representation who doesn't especially like to talk about herself. I'd rather listen to your stories than tell mine, which is probably why my scholarship on self-representation focuses on concealment and performance rather than revelation and confession, although revelation and confession can operate as concealment and performance, but that's a different presentation. So as I was thinking about what to share today, I was also reading Brene Brown's Dare to Lead with a group of class unit heads, as well as a book about Georgia O'Keeffe and Alfred Stieglitz and their personal and creative relationship. And I traveled to DC with colleagues Michelle McLeod and Donovan Anderson to the Council of Colleges of Arts and Sciences annual Dean's meeting. And by the way, we are doing pretty darn well as a college and as an institution, only navigating class 2 or 3 rapids as compared to class 5 whitewater. Always remember this. And that annual meeting always brings me into contact and conversation with former colleagues and past selves. And so does a trip to DC, which is one of the places I lived growing up. Small readerly me, learning to love museums on field trips, feeling a little car sick, learning to love how other people see. So this mashup got me thinking about vulnerability and leadership and travels and turning points. And I think that turning points offer a structure, as does a focus on the early years, what you might not see on my screen. I'm happy to answer questions about the later years that you might have, but I'm going to focus on those early years. So, turning point, how college made me. And these are actual old photos, so they're a little blurry. I chose Brown University because there weren't gen ed requirements, and because I felt a strong sense of belonging and challenge that I visited campus. So many smart people talking about books, movies, travel, politics, ideas. My parents dropped me off in Providence and moved several hours west of Albany, my then hometown. So I started becoming an adult, sort of on my own at that juncture, a little dislocated, a little free, moving in this new world with all the spotty wisdom of a young adult seeking through reading. Sorenil Kirsten, Gertrude Stein, literary and cultural theory, semiotics, feminist theology, Derrida, Kierkegaard, Bell Hooks and Wittgenstein, Islamic art, Hindu performance, Adrienne Rich, Audre Lorde, the abstract expressionists, and the New York School poets, and everything poetry, finding jazz and folk and Thai food, discovering Boston and the Cape, learning how to cook cheaply for a crowd, coming to understand just how class differences work while working the dish line at 6 a.m. at the Ratty and living next door to Al Gore's future son-in-law, whose best friend was Gloria Vanderbilt's son. And let's just say that he definitely did not work the dish line at the Ratty and didn't need to worry about connecting his liberal arts and sciences degree to a career, like I probably should have, but didn't. So I declared a religious studies major because then I didn't have to choose one discipline. I got to choose a mashup discipline. And I decided to take all my classes pass-fail because Brown let students do that to encourage experimentation and thinking. And I took a semester off to work in an art gallery in Capitola, California, because I wanted to know the Pacific. And when I came back, I ditched the Ratty in favor of becoming a barista, or if you use the word barista. And then finally, thinking a little bit about careers, I managed a place called the Peaceable Kingdom while the owner traveled to Turkey and India to stock the store with fair trade arts and crafts. And I worked at the Rhode Island State Council for the Arts to plan a festival at Roger Williams State Park. And then I graduated and ran an arts program in a community center up on Federal Hill And I decided to leave Providence for Buffalo because everyone was moving on, and my brother was in Buffalo and had a car. So that's me, and I thought it was great for a second. My freshman roommate was just on in Ann Arbor, remembers it that same way, that's why I moved to Buffalo. So you're not just making that up. So that's me, the future leader of class, intentional decision making. But seriously, curiosity, creativity, risk taking, understanding the limits of one's own experience and ways of knowing, learning how much there is to learn and the need to travel, to dislocate on purpose, practicing listening and humility as master narratives get smashed. These are leadership skills, change-making dispositions that led me to teaching and leading, both understood as lifelong learning, my life's work. From no plan to finding a calling. So there I was in Buffalo. I found a job as a writing specialist in the TRIO-funded Educational Opportunity Program at Buffalo State College, where I fell in love with helping first-gen students find their voices as writers, supporting them as they made their way. And I fell in love with my husband, then a math tutor and philosophy major. And I fell in love with the access and support mission of an urban serving public institution, which had also been a transformer, a portal for my mom, who had grown up on a dairy farm several hours upstate. Then one day I got a call from the English department chair a week before fall classes started, asking if I could cover a freshman writing class. And clearly they were desperate. I had a bachelor's degree and no classroom teaching experience, but they asked and I said yes, leaping, and immediately signed up for a writing theory course at the University of Buffalo for what I hoped would be a little just-in-time learning about teaching writing. But since it was the 1990s and theory was it was really just theory, which it turned out I liked. And those students, I wonder how they remember me and this class. What I remember is our freewheeling conversations, creating and sharing ideas, developing something to say. Might not have changed their lives, but they changed mine. So I applied. So I applied to this. Oh my God, I wasn't so down in there. So I applied to English PhD programs, having to explain this pass-fail grades and the religious studies major. And having to explain that I wanted a PhD because I wanted to teach. Right, you're supposed to talk about the research agenda. Because I wanted to teach, to continue to have the opportunity to learn with and from students from all walks of life. Sent the applications off and took a semester away to backpack through Southeast Asia. We're in Dharmsala, India there. Returned and taught the TRIO Summer Bridge program and moved again, this time to Binghamton, New York, set to become an English professor, to no one's surprise but my own. Into the Midwest, much to this Northeast girl's surprise. Fast forward through grad school, piles of books and dive bar beer, shooting pool and writing Renga, team teaching using the Paulo Freire playbook in more summer bridge programs, moved to Chicago to finish the dissertation because I thought it would take a couple of years to land a tenure track job, and Chicago seemed like a cool place to hang out for a couple of years. And my boyfriend, now husband's brother, had a room in a loft in the old McCormick Spice Factory building where he and a friend had a small theater. And I dissertated there all day long while everyone else was at work, read and wrote about art activism, American multiculture, and hybridization, mixture as a representational strategy. Waitress at Connie's Pizza all night long, serving the good folks of Pilsen, Bridgeport, Chinatown, the north edge of the South Side, stops, not pubs, pulling in more cash than I would a year later as an assistant professor, teaching 20th century literature and culture, multicultural American literatures, women writers, and creative writing at Indiana State University in Terre Haute, Indiana, where I landed my first job after 1 year, not 2. Turning point, tenure and promotion, and a baby on the banks of the Wabash. At Indiana State, leadership doors opened when I said yes, leaping. I was part of the team that created and team taught the first learning communities. I co-directed the struggling women's studies program with Linda, a colleague from political science, and we led it to stability and growth. I curated and published a collection of third-wave feminist theory with Leslie, a colleague from Binghamton, that made a mark on the field. Won a teaching award, got tenured and promoted, and wanted a baby, which wasn't happening. Another long story short, I could go on and on about the fertility industry and how little patience my husband and I had for that. I could go on and on about the adoption industry and its complicated race, class, gender, sexual orientation, global politics, and how little patience my husband and I had for that. The sadness, how little patience my husband and I had for that. But we had to have patience if we wanted a baby. And, of course, excellent have patience. And of course, parenthood changes everything. And of course, parenting a Black child as a white person changes everything. If you know history, if you're paying attention, if you I practiced this part so many times, so I wouldn't do this. If you're willing to see, you're privileged, and it's limited.
Well, you're making all of us cry. You love to cry.
I can't tell my story without telling you this part. I know it's hard for me to hear this. Sometimes the only explanation for interaction is individual and systemic racism. The way our schools are corrupted, the way microaggressions just keep showing up, and so does the generosity of friends and strangers and writers and artists and other adopted families sharing culture and knowledge if you're open and listening. Thank you for your patience. Good leadership. Terre Haute, Indiana, despite its Eugene Debs labor history and because of its deep plan history, didn't feel like the best place for white children for white parents to raise a Black child. So we moved again. Clearly this is a theme, some kind of American restlessness I've inherited, or part of the price we academics pay for choosing academia, maybe a personal inclination towards exploration and change. So we moved to Indianapolis, a better place to be a family that didn't match, as my daughter put it at the time. Fast forward again through lack of sleep, toddler play days, youth sports, elementary school field trips, travel softball, partnering with teachers at an expeditionary learning high school to create a college-going culture, making full professor at the University of Indianapolis, and then a conversation with a senior colleague about making an impact, about our shared commitment to college access and student success, connected to our state's need to recruit excellent teachers with a passion for serving our urban and rural schools. And the next thing I knew, I was the successful candidate in a national search for UIndy's founding director of the Woodrow Wilson Indiana Teaching Fellowship Program. So this was a program designed to recruit and support career changers from STEM fields as they transitioned into teaching in high-need Indiana schools. And a dark horse candidate at that with just a little PK-12 experience and an arts and humanities background, both of which apparently and surprisingly qualified rather than disqualified me in the committee's eyes. The assumption being that I'd have the fresh eyes needed to lead a group of STEM and education faculty to redesign teacher education in authentic collaboration with partner districts. So I said yes, leaping, and this foray into change leadership changed everything. So since then, I've served as Dean of Arts and Sciences at University of Indianapolis, Provost at the Evergreen State College, and now Class Dean here. And higher ed is fraught and messy and under siege. And it is still a privilege to be part of the great democratic experiment that is public higher education. And I've learned that change is hard and inevitable, and you might as well make it good. see it as a creative process, as evolution, as a way to survive and thrive. And I've learned that good leaders listen because they are curious and love learning and are open to surprises because that's what learning brings. And good leaders seek to understand the history and core values of the organizations and the people they lead, and to understand these as strengths and assets on which to build healthy futures. And good leaders know that leadership is a practice, a set of thoughtful and principled actions and well-chosen words. And they know they have blind spots and room to grow and have self-confidence anyway, sprinkled with humility. And they know how to build teams of amazing colleagues who challenge and support and complement each other, because leadership is collective work. Leadership is collective. And because leadership is all of us, before we move to questions and conversation, I want to offer a little exercise from Brene Brown's Dare to Lead that will engage you in thinking about your core values as leaders, that will remind you where you go to make decisions, to find your true north, that will get you thinking about your journeys and your turning points and how they've shaped your values and your work. So we've got two ways to do this. If you have your phones, I can then go to the QR code and pull up this list of values. I'll set up the prompt for you. If you'd rather have paper, raise your hands. Or if you don't have your phone, if you like paper, or if you don't have your phone, I can pass out the prompts up. Put a few on tables, hands raised, and anybody.